amazing masterclass. I'm just going to introduce our speaker and myself. I'm Melanie. I'm the Chief Executive of Capability for Change, which is a platform that we run that has multiple masterclasses and short learning modules, has online self-paced training as well. It goes under the brand name of Changeability Pro. And Myra is one of our contributors and she does an amazing job. She's written this fantastic masterclass. She has so much experience, senior level experience, which is very helpful. I think a great perspective. But I'm going to shut up because I'm really going to let her talk in just a moment. Just to put things in context, on this second slide, you'll see that the masterclass fits in with other content. Myra's just moving the slides forward, so the content that we have is this masterclass is part of an entire series, and on the Changeability Pro platform, we also have online self-paced where you can get certifications, but a lot of our members also use it for all of the short learning modules. So if you at any point want a demonstration and a chat with me about your own career aspirations and maybe what you need to be learning at this moment, my chairing of the old Change Management Institute, and for the last 5 years I've been running the Capability for Change global community, and I've been running the Capability for Change survey. I'm very, very happy to demonstrate the Changeability Pro platform and to help you think about your own personal and career development options. I love those sort of 30-minute chats, and you can book them anytime. I'll put the link in the chat in just a moment. Meanwhile, straight over to Myra, who's going to take us through her masterclass.
Thank you. Thanks, Mel. And thanks for breaking with your holiday as well. Really appreciate that. Well, hello to you all. As Mel said, I am a change lead, but also a change coach. And I'm running scaling change workshops with all sorts of organizations using a kind of a different way of working. And the reason I kind of came up with this, and some of it very much encouraged by Mel, was by looking over the 17 years of leading change. There were some patterns that were beginning to emerge, which kind of allowed me to look at where we need to actually have some extra push, I guess. So today we're going to do a little bit of insight into that, and just a very tiny piece about me. 17 years leading change in lots of different places, quite a lot of big tech. So I did 7 Workday initiatives, and more recently gone into the world of coaching, where I'm coaching individuals, coaching teams, applying the scaling change framework in order for people to be able to really get their own insights. And what's been really exciting is working with Mel to be able to do that in a setting online, because obviously we know that you guys are really busy, and sometimes being able to have a day out or half a day in a team setting isn't always easy. So we've created this for you. So as Mel talked about, it's in a much bigger context of other things going on. Just in terms of who we've got as audiences, do put into the chat, you know, why you were intrigued to come today, because scaling change is definitely resonating with the people that I'm talking to. And whether you're a transformation leader or a change sponsor, HR, project manager, whatever your sort of bag is, you're going to have an interest in this, because what is it going to allow you to do is create your own insights, but by using some of the experience that I've got. One of the things I've found over time is telling people just don't come to their own conclusions. So what we do through this masterclass is help you, and I'm sure Mel will interject in a moment. I've just seen her message on LinkedIn, so I've just gone one too far. What we try and do in the masterclass is give you the space with some of the insight that I've got to be able to come up with your own insights. So we really allow you to have time to get clear about what your motivators are. And one of the things I would definitely recommend to each one of you is come to the masterclass with a live change that you've got. And you may go, oh, actually, I'm not a change person, I'm doing something else. You can take a personal change as well as a big transformational change. You know, I've worked in different scales of global change, small organization. You can take the principles and apply them. So what we try and do with this masterclass is allow you to get clear on your outcomes, and also I've found by talking to others, they actually start seeing blind spots as well. It's like, oh, yikey, I didn't think about that. So we try and do some of that as well.
I can't help but interject here because there's something on the masterclass that really hit home as a blind spot for me. The masterclass is full of what look like innocuous sounding questions until you think about them. And there was one, each of the sessions on the masterclass, there are downloads where you can, so what's being talked about, you can work through on a worksheet. And there's one that particularly stays with me, which is there's an intention sort of record sheet, it's called. And there's a question in there which on the surface just looks like, yes, 1 out of 10. You're basically asked a few questions about your own change and the scope, the purpose. But this question, I have to say, Myra, is just blindsided me, which was, how confident do you feel that your stakeholders would give the same answer as you? Well, I have to be honest, it was one of those things that just rattled around in my head quite a lot, because obviously I didn't feel, it made me think, I wonder if they do. And my conclusion, which was the thing that I then acted on, and I was thinking about this as I finished that section of the masterclass, I went and walked the dog, I got up the next morning and thought about it, and it just made me realise that perhaps I knew some of the history of the discussions and decision making that perhaps my stakeholders didn't. And so would they answer the same way? There was one particular question which was about the cost if the change is not adopted. And I had a very strong view, but it really made me ponder. And I think this is what this masterclass is about. So you can sit there and you can do session after session, which I did do. And then I went back again and I redid certain sessions. And that particular question stayed with me, and it made me go back and change my behaviour, because what I then did was I started some communications which gave a little bit of history to certain decisions and explained almost a flowchart of things that had been discarded as those discussions had taken place, which my stakeholders did not know anything about.
Yeah.
And I think that really did make a big difference on one of the changes I'm working on. So I might have been doing this 35 years, and it shows you sometimes these things can really provoke new thought, new ideas. So thanks, Myra. Really
Fantastic. I'm so glad that happened. And this is what I'm finding when other people are saying the same. There's like a validation, yes, we've got it, or actually you've made us think. And the other one is around the oversight. So one of the things that people are getting interested about is, as you and I have talked about, Mel, there's lots and lots of change happening and simultaneous change. And if you look at the change models, they're very silo driven. And this is why partly I kind of came up with the thing, was you found that it wasn't just one change. There was like sideswipe. And in fact, if we get time, we're going to look at a very little exercise to help get clear with that. So what I'd say to anybody listening to this is you can use this for yourself, but you can actually take the questions, run it in a team session as well. And I think you'll get real power from that. So I won't drain the side. You've got it there and you can catch it afterwards. But really just trying to put this in a nutshell. When you do the masterclass, really take a live situation, and what you're going to get is like a sweet spot where you're going to have some questions that have been derived because I've done it a fair few times, but it's not about me. It's about the way that you answer the questions, your context, your culture, your knowledge. You can come and derive that. So what we do is we take change wisdom, change coaching, and the self-awareness. And I have to say, I didn't make up the quote at the bottom. I nicked it, but it is so true. We have a measure of choice and control, what we have, but if we can't see it, we're blindsided. So by having change coaching, as an individual, as a team, you can really start being very clear, getting much more clarity about what's there. So I'll move on from that slide, but I just want to kind of get that clear. In terms of how it's set up in the masterclass, there's an intro, and I do talk about the power of lessons learned, because hindsight is a wonderful thing. I'm sure, put your hands up if you go, oh, I wish I'd known that before. It's really, really important that we kind of take lessons of what we've done before. So we do a power of lessons learned, and then we get into why that's important for us as individuals. It was important for me to look back on 17 years of leading change and going, where were the common patterns? Where were the pitfalls? When it was good, why was it good? And there were 6 levers that absolutely stood out amongst anything else. Getting that change intention right up front, being really clear about what's motivating someone to do something, but also what happens if you don't. I was working with a client recently and we went, what would happen if you didn't do this? It was like a double negative on it. It blew her brain slightly, but it was really, really powerful to start thinking about that. And that change oversight one, again, we tend to look at programs in isolation. So let's look in the ecology of the organization. How does it fit with the values and culture of the organization? How does it fit with other things going on? So the oversight and the infrastructure kind of allows you to get into that. And then capacity and capability, some quite probing questions about how capable your organisation is and whether they have the capacity. Mel and I have talked many times about the fact that people are just going, I've got too much going on. So by creating space to consider those things, you can then start thinking, well, how are we going to be purposeful? And the change attention, it may not be a word you've used, but for me, that's about how do you create people-centered governance, new habits, new ways of leading that allow people to come to the right conclusions. So I'm not telling you what to do through this masterclass, but what I'm doing is creating questions guided around some lessons learned for you to be able to get to the conclusions that you want to get to.
I do think that in these 6 sessions and sections, that when it comes to, you can use this as a jumping off point to plan any one of your workshops, anything where you've got senior leaders involved, perhaps. I think, being blunt, one of the things that really helps is that you do have intention, oversight, infrastructure, capacity, capability, and attention. So it might be, and I certainly find in mine, that perhaps it's oversight and a little bit of infrastructure where I really like my senior leaders to be giving a bit more consideration. But because it's within a model, and beautiful graphics from Myra, so I can use that sort of model. So it doesn't sort of hone in on those. You have to answer all 6 areas. But it enables me to get what I want without sort of implying, hey, you failed on this bit, you still haven't given me this. You are looking at the change as if it were an independent change, which I think is possibly one of the things that, here we are in 2025, if I had to pick something that's going to govern how we deal with change in the next 5 years, multiple simultaneous change and capability for change wider than just the change team are the 2 themes that I think I see coming through all the time. But I like the fact that there's 6 in the model, and you might have one area where you're a bit concerned that nobody's really thinking, and you can get people talking without that emphasis of this bit is what we have to focus in on.
Yeah, thank you. One of the things I've said throughout this masterclass webinar is make sure you've got a live situation to apply it to, because if you just in receiving mode, you don't kind of get the power of it in the same way. So do have a look at the downloads, because that will help you get to your own conclusions. And as Mel said, there are worksheets against each of the masterclass sections. I'm improving my questions all the time when I'm out with clients doing it. So I have just updated the questions as well. But also make up your own. If you've got an area and you think, okay, so what do you think the capabilities of our change network? Are there any particular individuals who we need to give a little boost to? So it's about capability, but it's looking about it in your own setting and what you potentially need to do. Now, when Mel and I were talking about this session, we talked about how do we actually try and make it live for you as well, so that you actually get something out of it in this 30-minute window. So what we've done is we've actually created a little bit of a fun exercise for you with it as well. So we've taken one of the levers, and as I said, change oversight for me is an area where I quite often found that I got caught a cropper. I had my lovely change program going on, and then another program would kind of sideswipe it. It's like, darn it. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to show you this slide, and just so in the masterclass we talk about the fact that programs sometimes get sideswiped. We've done all the best plans, we've got the stakeholder map, we've got the communications plan, and there's another part of the business, they've done something and it's coming at the same time. So given that sometimes happens, what we just thought be useful for you now, recognizing that it's questions that are really powerful for you to come to your own insight. Just pop in the chat whether you actually know how many other change initiatives are happening at the same time as something that you've got going live. So I'm just working with a change manager at the moment, and they've got a go live next January. And we were just talking about their test process, and their test process happens at the same time as their quarter end, and they're wanting accountants in that. So you get the example. So it's like, how do we look at the peak spots when we want to engage our communities, whether that's at the go live, whether that's at certain points? Do you have a mechanism to understand what's going on at the same time? And if you don't, which is the kind of next questions there, I would say take one step today to consider how you're going to find that out. Now, one of the ways I talk about in the masterclass was around the communications team. There was one company I worked with, absolutely brilliant communications team, and they had a whole sort of diary of all the things that were going on, business as usual, all sorts of things happening in the business. And as a result, we actually took one change initiative and we looked at another one that didn't look as if it was similar at all, but actually we suddenly realized there were some synergies in what we were talking about there. Mel, is there anything coming up in the chat that's worth us kind of looking at in terms of from a reflective point of view?
One of the things I was just reflecting on was that I have learned from this exercise that perhaps my stakeholders, when I'm trying to ask what else is going on, they edit their remarks. And I think it's been reflecting on how do they edit their remarks, which is that they edit based on what is it that they think I ought to know or need to know based on, and it's a bias, and it's not a bad one, it's just they're trying to be helpful, which is that they are narrowing down what they're telling me about based on the scope of the change I'm dealing with. And they think, oh, things connected with that. And I'm looking at it much wider and going, it doesn't matter if they're connected or not. There are other points that, are they happening at the same time? Or are they happening to the same people? Are they happening to the same data? And so my interest is much wider than perhaps my stakeholders who are trying to say, oh, no, there's nothing else going on in finance at that time. Well, no, there might not be anything else going on in finance at that time, but did you know that HR are going through an absolute restructure, and that some of the people that we might want to be calling on are not going to be available? So I always think that that's interesting about thinking, how do you reassure your stakeholders that perhaps they don't need to self-edit as much as they do? We've got Nicola who's saying, I have a large spreadsheet tracking other change initiatives, about 15, regular check-in with project leads. So Nicola sounds like she's really got a grip of things, because I think that she's absolutely hit the nail on the head. It is up to us. There might not be an official portfolio management function, but Nicola's got it right. She's got a spreadsheet and she has taken the initiative to build the relationships with other people. And I think that's critical. As an external consultant, Rob's finding that the client gives you an edited version of what they think is relevant. Yeah, we're having the same issues, Rob, and they miss the synergies. So he tries to get to the IT change board and the comms leads. That's really interesting. Even if you can't get to the meetings, these days I do sort of ask for, can I see the last 3 months of any board steering committee, just so I can get a sense of something. I remember once, I'm not going to name them, but there was a law firm and they sent me loads and loads of files, which is really great. But it turned out to be over 500 pages worth. And I still remember it because I was up so late, but I thought I have to honour the fact that they've sent all this to me. Have they sent it all to me to be helpful, or have they sent it all to me to put me off ever asking again? Whichever way, whatever the intention, I must honour this. And I remember that the only way I could get through it was I got a big pad of Post-it notes and I wrote the name of each initiative I was seeing on various different minutes and spreadsheets and God knows what. And I wrote them all down and put the odd comment. Sometimes the comment was when the go live date was. Sometimes the comment was the program director's name. It wasn't very well organised information. And actually what turned out, the next morning I went into their boardroom and they had big plate glass window and I covered it with all my Post-it notes and tried to organise them. And then what I did was I simply invited the board to do the same that I had done, which is to stare at it and try to find patterns and organise it. And it was just really interesting because they had no idea. It was clear they had no idea either. So my little bit of research where I was trying to get to grips with things, I just represented to them. I wanted to show them I cared. I wanted to show them I was interested. I wanted to show them that I was prepared to try to analyse things. I hadn't gone out of my way to say, do you know this? But just by putting it up saying, I'd really like your help. And I did it all before the official meeting started, while they all had coffee, because it was on their plate glass window. Well, to be honest, we never really got to the agenda. For the next hour, we spent a lot of time, and actually the agenda changed for the presentation I was giving, which in the end, it was all agreed that we would workshop almost a portfolio. From that little, it was a giant pad of Post-it notes. It was absolutely stunning, the number of pieces of paper I had. And I've never forgotten it because the head of finance for that particular law firm had one of the projects was his, which was all about getting an accreditation in sort of quality management. So it was ISO 9000, it was on there. And he passionately felt that it was really helpful for the organisation in the wider scheme of things. The reason I've never forgotten him is because he fell on his sword during that meeting and said, actually, there's so much else on there I think has more to offer, that therefore I'll give this up. So I thought that was really, really interesting. Sarah saying that she's just creating this single view of all change. There is so much more than anyone told me. And she's talking about had to get people to share all the puzzle pieces. So yes, Sarah, totally with you. I think we would all say and this is why I love this masterclass, because actually it is a great way of inspiring people to share a piece of the puzzle that they didn't even know sometimes they had. And that actually what they say makes a seismic difference. Laura's saying that they've got an official portfolio management function where she is that tracks it all, but she agrees that it's better to try to get that holistic view. So she reaches out to her contacts, because she's actually right that there's the official and probably strategic view that's probably higher than a load of other sort of initiatives going on below that deck level that our stakeholders are affected by or are passionate about or connected to in some way. And then the last one comes back from Nicola saying, getting edited versions from teams or stakeholders of what's relevant is very common. I have to fight hard to get into the right forums and meeting spaces to find out what's going on. And I think probably we'd all say it's probably harder now. It's a hybrid world because this is about people.
Exactly. And it's one of the reasons I would encourage you all to actually take some of the questions from there and actually have them in a team setting. One of the things I'm trying to encourage is like a kick-off meeting or an assurance meeting. So one of the things I talk about in the change attention is, how do you have regular conversations with key folk who you can just start enriching this? Obviously in a coaching setting, you have one-on-one time with people, they give you all their attention, and in a busy day-to-day, as a change lead, that doesn't always happen. But how can you create those micro moments where you're having the right conversations and suddenly you get some of those insight? We denied about what to call this masterclass, and it's got a much longer title, but it was because I was really passionate about, there's lots of frameworks out there, but it's about how do you create your own insights to be able to create your program. Mel and I can come in and tell you stuff, but it's only by you taking some of the questions and applying them to your world that you're really going to get that. And sometimes you'll need somebody else to come in, like I do with organizations and individuals, and put the question back and just kind of like have a facilitated session. But there are some real things that you can take now, and just by doing the class, doing it with others. I do talk about how do you actually run it in a team session. I've got something about how do you set this up for a team, because of course psychological safety is really important. Some people don't feel safe to be able to say some of the things they want to say. So a lot of it is about how do you create the right environment to start with, who do you have in the room, how do you play those things through. So it is about what you get, but also setting it up for rapport, for safety, to be able to have those really rich conversations that you need to have.
Last thing I'd say was that you did a benefits of hindsight sheet. And one of the things that I've learned in using that in some workshops is that you make the point in that worksheet that this is about a growth mindset. And what I've learned to do really simply is to put success and then put failure, put a cross through both of those, and basically say, no, learning. Because I think that's a very quick way of saying this isn't to criticize and this isn't to celebrate. This is all about what did we learn. And it just reminded me that growth mindset piece, that the comments you make in that download is really helpful.
Brilliant. That's excellent. I love Carol Dweck's work and I come back to it a lot. Let's just go to the final slide and just put the next steps up. I'm just going to build the slide, Mel, and allow you to talk to some of these things.
By now, basically, what we've done on the Agile Change Management website is that we've made sure that you can buy this masterclass and you can start it immediately. And I think that's the key thing to think about. You can just get on with it, get it done, and get there. We've got an entire masterclass series, so you can buy this and others. Alternatively, what you can do is you can join the Changeability Pro platform, and the masterclasses come as part of your annual membership. The most important thing I would say is that for each of these digital badges, the thing I'm most proud of is that we've made sure that you get a digital badge, so that I'm going to say something controversial now, but based on my work in the States, but I think the digital badges are a very quick way of evidencing your continued professional development. The reason I'm going to say something controversial is that I've been in a number of calls recently where my heart has chilled. I was in one last week, just before I came on holiday. It was kind of depressing. America is closed was the viewpoint of a number of people within the States who are consultants, and who have basically experienced that their programs have stopped. There's a huge amount of retrenchment. That another word that they have, there's a large bank that's got rid of all of their agile coaches. But there was 150 of them. They've all been made redundant immediately because the phrase coaching is no longer sort of, if you're not delivering, you're not anything. We're in a crisis. We're in a financial crisis. It was a very depressing call. But one of the things it prompted for me is, having been through the COVID crisis, having been through the 2008 financial crisis, the one thing that I always come back to is that when I look at the stats, when I look at the conversations from people who are doing things with their organisations, the ones that have kept themselves up to date, the ones that have always got something new to say, the ones that have got the inner confidence that comes from learning, they are the ones that have always thrived. I've been doing this over 30 years. I've got a lot of experience, and so has Myra, and I'm sure she'll say the same thing. In these situations, personal development matters. And I think a lot of organisations are holding their breath. They don't know which way the tariffs are going to go. Whichever country you're in, there are organisations that are now starting to worry about their sales. They're starting to worry about the future state of things. We might see a huge number of change programs that are retrenchment and restructuring. But the one thing that always stands out, those who continue to develop themselves are the ones in the best possible position. And I think that's where my passion lies. It's all about making sure that we're all able to keep going, to thrive and build our capability. I don't know, Myra, if you want to share a few words on your thoughts of the world at the moment.
It is depressing, but I'm also like, it's half empty or half full, isn't there? Whatever way and whatever type of change is going on, to be able to step back and look and go, what can we learn from this and what can we do differently? That's going to be the differentiator for all of us, individually as people and in organisations.
Yeah, and I really love the fact that in this, it's the growth mindset. I think, as I've said, I've already said about that, the intention questionnaire that you came up with, just fantastically thought-provoking questions. So I think if anybody is going through and getting into the interview stage for any roles at the moment, one of the things I'd say is that this masterclass is stocked full of some fantastically thought-provoking questions that you might also want to ask your prospective employer as much as they would like to ask you. And so you can definitely see this, if you go on the masterclass, almost from an interview prep perspective as much as anything else. I cannot recommend this masterclass highly enough. I think the quality of it is stunning. You can see there is a huge amount of thought and experience that sits behind it.